Colin's mom tucked him into bed, kissing his forehead and whispering, "Sleep tight, my little knight." But sleep was the furthest thing from Colin's mind. His room wasn't just a room, it was his fortress. And tonight the shadows were dancing in a way he'd never seen before. He pulled the covers up to his chin, his eyes fixed on the two decorative suits of medieval armor that stood like silent sentinels on either side of his fireplace. They were just old metal, right? Granddad's collection. But as a sliver of moonlight cut through the window, one of the helmets slowly, silently turned its head. Colin's breath hitched. He squeezed his eyes shut, then opened them again. It was still looking at him. Then with a groan of rusty metal, the knight lifted its gauntlet and beckoned. Come, every instinct screamed, "Hide!" But a strange curiosity pulled him out of bed. His bare feet were cold on the floorboards as he tiptoed closer. The second suit of armor also creaked to life, turning its head with an eerie screech. Before Colin could even yelp, the first knight placed a cold, heavy hand on his shoulder. It didn't feel threatening. It felt protective. Suddenly, the floor beneath them began to glow. Swirls of blue and gold light spiraled out from under the rug and the room dissolved. One moment he was in his bedroom. The next he was standing in the vast torchlit hall of a stone castle. The two knights stood beside him, no longer just empty armor, but glowing with an inner light. Where are we?" Colin whispered. The first knight pointed a metal finger towards a huge, dark tapestry hanging on the far wall. On it, a fearsome, shadowy dragon was depicted, breathing black fire over a terrified village. A low growl rumbled through the hall and the tapestry began to ripple, the dragon's shadow twisting as if it were trying to break free. "The shadow worm," a voice echoed, not from the knights, but seemingly from the very stones of the castle. "It feeds on forgotten dreams and turns them into nightmares." The shadow worm's head began to push through the tapestry, its form a terrifying mix of smoke and darkness. Its roar was the sound of 1,000 bad dreams at once. Colin felt a wave of fear so cold it nearly froze him to the spot. But then the knight beside him drew a shimmering, ethereal sword. The other raised a glowing shield. They stood between him and the monster. They were his guards, his protectors. With a surge of courage he didn't know he had, Colin grabbed the nearest thing he could find, a discarded golden goblet, and hurled it at the beast. It passed right through the smoky form, but the worm flinched, distracted for just a second. That was all the knights needed. They charged forward, a blur of shining steel and magical light, clashing with the shadow creature in a silent, dazzling battle. Colin watched mesmerized as his knights fought. They weren't just old relics, they were heroes. And they were fighting for him. As the final blow was struck, the shadow worm shrieked and dissolved into wisps of smoke, which were sucked back into the tapestry, leaving it still and silent once more. The castle hall began to fade, the torchlight dimming. The blue and gold light swirled around Colin's feet again. He felt a gentle push, and then he was back in his bed, the morning sun streaming through his window. It must have been a dream, but as he looked towards the fireplace, he saw the two suits of armor, standing exactly where they always were. Except now, on the gauntlet of the first knight, there was a long, dark scratch. And resting at the base of the second, as if it had been dropped, was a slightly dented golden goblet. Colin smiled. He wasn't just Colin. He was Colin the Brave, commander of the Night Knights, and he couldn't wait to go to bed tonight.